Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy, our social work podcast. I am Dr. Toy, and I am here to answer questions. It's Ask the Therapist segment. Brrr, I should have did a drum roll before that. Anyway, it's Ask a Therapist time, and I love this time. You all sent in your questions. There are so many, so I'm trying to get through the questions the best I can. And these questions in particular, they merit each other. It's almost like they had some similar situations. And so I'm going to read 2 questions today. But before I do that, if you have a question, please write directly to me. Email me at toyaj@pitt.edu. That's toyaj@pitt.edu. This time I didn't forget my email address because I sometimes forget. All right, we are ready to roll. Thank you for tuning in once again to Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy. You can listen to past, present podcasts right there in my Linktree link. So press it down there. But I'm on everything, y'all. YouTube and Apple this and that. So you can find me anywhere you find podcasts. Our podcast is there. All right, let's get to it, y'all. I'm really excited to answer these questions. I took some time really to focus and marinate on these questions because they were so important and I felt the sensitivity of them. So I'm going to read them right now. Basically, the first one says, how do I learn to be vulnerable with others as someone who was emotionally abused by my father? There is nothing more I want in this world than to be seen, but I run away anytime someone tries to get close to me. Yes, that has to be so hard. You want to get close to people in a relationship, whether it be romantic or friendships, and you tend to push them away because that part of your brain says they're going to hurt you. They're going to abuse you. It's going to be dangerous. So I'm going to address that. Thank you so much for sending your question to me. Thank you so much. And the second question is, how does physical trauma live and remain in your body, even after feeling like you've reached an emotional point of peace or healing? That is from an anonymous person, so I can't give you your Starbucks gift card. But the first question, I know who you are, and I will send you instructions on how to get your Starbucks gift card because you sent in a question, and your question was answered on the Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy podcast. Okay, here we go. So immediately when I saw these questions, I thought about, wow, what type of emotional and even physical pain are you experiencing because of the trauma that has happened in your life? And so it could be neglect, abuse, verbal, physical abuse, financial abuse, any of that. Just the potential threat of physical abuse, name calling, any of that. It's all abuse, doggone it. And we don't say this is lesser and this is not as much, and it's all abuse. And so we're gonna keep it as such. I just want to give a shout out to Women's Center and Shelter because they do such a marvelous, fantastic job explaining what abuse is, what the range is, but not the hierarchy of abuse. So thank you for all that you do, Women's Center and Shelter. I am a board member, so I tend to ring that bell. All right, so let's go. I immediately thought about The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And he's a psychiatrist and an author. And I've read this book back in the day, and then I read it recently. I like to read it with some time in between just to see, because you grow in the profession. I'm a therapist. I'm a trauma therapist, and I like to, and a professor of social work. And so I like to continue to grow. And as I grow, I like to reach back to the books I've already read. But The Body Keeps the Score tends to be, it's the bestseller for so many weeks. It tends to be one of the best books out there, in my opinion. Bessel van der Kolk does have some controversy behind him, but we're not going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about what he actually put in his book that is super helpful. It's been helpful to me as a trauma therapist, and it's also been helpful to my clients and to my students that I talk about. He has a bunch of videos out. I am actually going to put a link, right down below, a video that I like. But I'm also going to talk about just some points that were in his book. And I always got to put my Dr. Toy 2 cents in there, mix it in there for you, because I have a lot of experience working and learning and serving folks that have been impacted and traumatized, impacted by trauma. So trauma's of various ranges, from homicide survivors, suicide survivors, rape survivors, domestic violence, to car thefts. I've seen a lot and I've learned a lot from the people, and I love serving this population. So let me get to it. Okay, so I love this quote. According to Bessel van der Kolk, and The Body Keeps the Score, he says, as long as we don't resolve the trauma, the stress hormones that the body secretes during the traumatic event, okay? The body secretes stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. And these stress hormones, during the time of the incident, okay? The body secretes those hormones to protect itself from danger. They keep circulating if we don't resolve the trauma. Okay, Dr. Toy, how do you resolve the trauma? Glad you asked. We're going to get to that towards the end. So keep listening so you can hear some tips, but also some research. I'm a professor, so I like to talk about research, and I love the history of treatment models and do they work, and the efficacy and all of that. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. All right. And he also says, these hormones are secreted to protect the body, and it's a defense mechanism. And so defensive movements and emotional responses that belong to the past traumatic event, they keep replaying in the present. So we're talking about triggers. Have y'all heard about triggers? You know that I did a podcast. It's in season 1. And it talks about default responses. This is what I'm talking about, the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn responses, okay? I dig into that really deep. If you want to know more, go to the Linktree link and find that podcast and listen to it, because it'll really give you some foundation. So I'm not going to dig too deep, but I'm giving you kind of an overview, a review of what was covered in the podcast, and also what The Body Keeps the Score talks about. So, we have that brain alarm, the amygdala. So that's the alarm system. And when it's tripped, if you have an alarm system in your house or in your apartment, and you accidentally trip that alarm, whether it be movement. One time we had birthday balloons that tripped up the alarm. One time my dog tripped it up. It doesn't know. The alarm system doesn't know that it's my dog Thor. It doesn't know that it's balloons. It just knows that there is a potential threat. So it doesn't have to be real in order for the alarm to sound. Okay, you with me? All right. And so the alarm system is triggered. And a lot of times it's triggered, our alarm system, the amygdala, is triggered through the 5 senses, because that's how we take in stimuli from the environment. And so things that I heard and I saw and I tasted and I smelled and I felt, I touched it, I remember, or my hippocampus and all of the parts that have to do with memory, it remembered that, okay? And so it said, I remember that, and I'm laying it all down, okay? I'm laying down the memory in my brain. So all that limbic system, they work together, take in the information, whether it be real or perceived, and say, the alarm system says this is serious. But it can overreact because of the things that you've gone through, okay? And so when it overreacts, it tends to overreact in our body, and we feel the overreaction in our body. And so we'll feel physical symptoms first. We'll feel pain, we'll feel aches. And so you'll get things like headaches. People are diagnosed, a lot of clients diagnosed with fibromyalgia, stomach, digestive system, aches, heartburn, back aches. You know how we hold stress in our body? Well, triggers make sure that those stress hormones go within our body and we feel it in our body. And so our body literally remembers the traumatic stress. It remembers the victimization and holds the memory in our body. How deep is that? So we're feeling it in our body a lot of times before we even realize that we're thinking it. Okay? Okay, you are with me. I feel it. Let's keep on going. And so our mind yanks us back into the past because our prefrontal lobe, remember the prefrontal lobe or the prefrontal cortex is not engaged. It doesn't know that we're in a situation that doesn't mirror this overreaction. It just says, you know what, this reminds me of that danger. And so what I'm going to do is basically shut off, and that reaction, that reactive part of the brain is going to bypass the prefrontal lobe and say, we're going to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Okay? And so that causes us to yell, scream, be angry, shiver, go in like a turtle and protect ourselves, push people away, shun people. And then we feel it in our body because we're not resolving those stress hormones. We're not letting it out of our body. Okay. And so when we're not letting it out, it stays in there. I always remember this situation. You know, I watched the Olympics from the couch, and and I always wonder after they get done running. Sprinting is one of my favorite. I love it. And so you have sprinters, the 100 and 200, so exciting. The relay, so exciting. But do you notice after they run, 9-second race, 10-second race, they still run around or they still walk around. They might fall out and get up and move some more. All of that adrenaline causes them to run very, very fast, like a motorcycle. They're flying down the field. But what is causing them to run that fast are the hormones, and they're channeling, that adrenaline to make sure they have the highest number, the fastest speed. Okay. But the thing is, when we are regular humans that aren't Olympic champions, we have these stress hormones in our body. And if we're not moving and getting it out, it will stay in our body. And it can cause things like heart disease and diabetes and high blood pressure and chronic stomach issues and things like that. Okay. So the PTSD symptoms, I talk a lot about that. So that has to deal with sleeplessness. It can deal with hypervigilance or being hyper alert, which is one thinking that people are going to hurt you and you're not trusting. And so I'm really talking about my viewers that ask those questions, why can't I get in relationships? Why do I still feel it in my body, even though I went to therapy and I resolved it cognitively? Well, because those memories are still there. I'm going to talk about how trauma can be healed and treated, because this is not a life sentence, y'all. You've been through some messed up stuff, but that doesn't make you messed up. You are not messed up at all. Matter of fact, you're our heroes to make it through something like that. And we're going to talk about some ways that we can get it out of our bodies so that we're not reacting over and over and over again. Okay. All right. And so symptoms, they can be healed and rewired to reactivate or react. They can be rewired to react in a different way. Oh, I got your attention, huh? Yes. And so neuroplasticity is so interesting. You have to look it up and read more about it. You spell it neuroplasticity. It is really interesting. There's a lot of recent research on it, but it basically means that you can restructure the response you have to stimuli. So wait a minute, this automatic response that I've been talking about and all I talk about, this automatic response can actually be rewired and rerouted to not go to that reactive triggering response that I feel in my body. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. This is why this podcast is called Healing Overflow, y'all, because there are ways that you can be healed and you don't have to be tortured and you don't always have to keep your distance from people, not go to parties. There's too many people in the room. I don't want to be around them. That certain person triggers me. And so I'm not going to be in that situation. You don't have to live in captivity to what has happened to you. You already had that happen, and it could be, you might even say, oh, Dr. Toy, mine is not as bad. My trauma is not as bad. Like, I don't have this, I don't have that. Yes, but it was traumatic to you. And it doesn't matter the traumatic event. It matters how your brain processed and perceived it. And so when you have, going back to the questions, when you feel vulnerable, in a way, that's our first question. When you feel vulnerable, then your spidey senses or your amygdala, the alarm says, we can't have this happen again. And so what I'm going to do is put up a guard. I'm going to make sure that I'm protected. That is what your brain is doing, because your brain feels like the Secret Service when a bullet gets passed and hits the president. Okay? Your Secret Service said, I failed, and I'm going to make sure I don't fail again. So I'm going to be on super high alert. Please speak to your Secret Service and say, you didn't fail. You didn't fail. You know why? Because you're still alive. You're still sane. You're still able to write in and say, I noticed something's happening to me, and I'm wondering what I can do about it. You are in a nice healing position. And those of you that are saying, hey, this is about me, you're in a nice healing position. And if it's not about you and you look at your friend or your family and say it's about them, let's share this so they understand. Let's get in a good healing position where you are receiving and you know that this sort of thing that you don't have to live with. How about that? All right, that's victory. Okay, so you said that you're vulnerable, and when someone wants to get close to you, you basically tell them, get away, in so many words, your actions. So you might not be returning texts or phone calls or invitations to hang out and really, connect with one another. You're making sure you're keeping distance. Well, it's not anything wrong with you. It's a normal reaction to say, I need you to keep this boundary so that you don't hurt me. But how do you tell the brain, this person's not going to hurt me, when they might? There's a probability. And so you can test the probability. I'm a CBTer too. I teach CBT at Pitt. I study CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and I do CBT. And I believe that perceiving an event it's it's on a continuum. Like, you really think about it. The way you perceive an event is because of the history that you've gone through. And, the history is the traumatic part. That's the traumatic history. And so when you look at an event that resembles the traumatic history that you've gone through, you tend to say, well, this must be trauma. But that's not always true. And so you have to test the situation and say, is this indeed a traumatic event? Will this indeed hurt me? Will this person hurt me? And so you give them an opportunity, just a little bit here. Can I trust you with that? Okay, how about this? And you're allowed to have boundaries. Question number one, you're allowed to have boundaries, but let me make sure, this is you talking, let me make sure they're not too wide and broad and I'm keeping people away that actually can plant beautiful seeds of beautiful flowers that will sprout out. People that are really watering my seeds and putting things into me that are really helping me to be positively adaptive to my environment instead of triggering. So you're going to test them out. Just like you test thoughts in CBT, you're going to test the people to make sure they're trustworthy and they're not going to hurt you or neglect you or anything like that. Okay. And then number two question, you talked about the physical trauma living in your body, and you had a peaceful point in your mind. You're just on the healing journey. You're still on the healing journey. There's no setback here. You're still moving. If you had some resolution in your brain, that little toy where you have the triangle, the square, you put your square in the square. You put your triangle in the triangle, you're on the healing journey. It's a journey. It's not a sprint like I talked about earlier. You're not doing this in 9 seconds and 10 seconds and crushing world records and things. You're not doing that. This is a healing journey. And so think back at things that used to trigger you and upset you. They don't trigger and upset you anymore. You're here, not here. Okay, so encourage yourself. This is not a setback. You have an emotional point that you reach. So, congratulations. That's wonderful. Now you got to get your body in line. Okay, that's just the next stage of the healing process. And there are ways that I'm going to talk about how you can bring the power back and self-regulate. Okay, so neuroplasticity talks about self-regulating, restructuring that response, healing that pathway instead of it getting derailed by that reactive part of your brain. You're going to say, this is the way you're going to go. You're going to walk this path reaction, and you can do that. And there's several ways to do that. Okay, so I'm going to answer the question, how do you resolve the problem? How do you resolve the trauma and train your brain can I say it right? to regulate. That's what I'm trying to say. So how do you resolve the trauma and train the brain to regulate? How do you do that? To self-soothe, to regulate, to be able to not be overreactive. And people say, oh my goodness, why did they act like that? They didn't need to do all that. And you embarrassed yourself or something. Meanwhile, this is your normal reactive system just reacting, but it's because you had this traumatic event happen that it's derailing. Okay, we're going to get it back on the rails. So EMDR is one way. And so these are some evidence-based methods. These are some tried and true methods that trauma therapists have talked about. And also Van der Kolk has talked about and has done research. And so let me tell you that EMDR, I am EMDR certified. It's eye movement desensitization and processing. And we actually have courses here at Pitt for therapists. So if you want to go through that, go on our website and check that out. But EMDR, it's psychotherapy technique. Okay, it's just one of the very many techniques. But this specific model and technique helps people process traumatic memory, and it tends to go beyond because it's going like inside of the memory that might not be at the forefront. So it could be in the subconscious memory. It's not right here. It's triggered. I remember. No, it's buried down in there. And through bilateral stimulation, reprocessing occurs of that traumatic event. And so, or distressing experiences. And so, clinicians use lights. I'm using my hand like this, y'all, because this is what I do. Or you can use tapping in different ways. There's light bar. There's all sort of sound bars, sound with headphones that EMDR therapists use. And there's so many more trained now than when I was trained. So it is wonderful to have so many people trained in trauma and in EMDR. So that's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Okay. So that's one way. Yoga. So yoga has been like the frou-frou mindfulness, and mindfulness is actually, to me, its own category, but yoga tends to be in there. So I'll talk about mindfulness too. He didn't have mindfulness in there, but I put some of my suggestions as well that I realized working with the incarcerated population, ex-offenders, that is really, really helpful and useful working with that population. And so mindfulness has been all the buzz for so long, but it's really, mindfulness helps you get back into your body. So when you're a sexual assault survivor, you tend to not want to be in that body. You feel like it's contaminated or, it's been violated, which it has been. But getting yourself back into the body, your body is a temple. Your body is valuable and precious jewels, platinum, the highest level of gold and pure diamond. Okay. And so you deserve to get back into your body and feel safe in your body. And so mindfulness can do that through things like breathing. When we are trauma reactivated or triggered, we tend to hold it in our body and we tend to not breathe. We hold our breath. We're stopping, we're freezing, all of that. But mindfulness teaches you to be present in the here, in the now. And trauma says, nope, go back in the past. And that thing happened to you back then. So mindfulness, you're breathing, you're doing muscle progressive relaxation, you're doing 5 senses, grounding techniques, and yoga wiggles right in there with getting back in your body and controlling your body and the movements and how you're feeling in your body. Yoga tends to be all the rage. Folks do hot yoga and goat yoga, and all of that is really helpful. I have clinician friends that do trauma yoga, which is wonderful, but yoga has some really good research out there. Another thing, I use art therapy. Art therapy tends to really be helpful. It is growing in as many, research, finding that it's very helpful, especially when it's paired with something like that. CBT has like over 2,000, researchers saying, and research papers saying that, okay, CBT works. So when you pair it with something that's super evidence-based and respected, it tends to be even more helpful. But using art therapists, I have art therapy podcast that I did with my art therapist friends. It's very helpful, very useful in therapy. And so I'm sticking art therapy in there, okay? Talk therapy, y'all, it still works. Psychodynamic theory is very old. I have a degree in psychology. I tend to really like Freud, even though Freud had some off the wall type of thinking, but there was a lot in what he had to say. And so a lot of treatment models are based on his theories. And so, even Aaron Beck's CBT, there's some stuff woven in there. You can tell I really like history of treatment models and social work and psych stuff. It's just like, oh, I'm nerding out again. So I really enjoy that. But talk therapy is effective. And sometimes talk therapy, you'll hit a certain point where you'll say, okay, it doesn't seem like we're going beyond that. And that's because there's that hidden memory, that stuff that's back there, and you might need to switch, models, but not necessarily your therapist. So your therapist can go from one model to the next and whatever's helpful. A lot of us tend to be eclectic and we have a lot of different treatment models. We have this big pot. I always stir. You see me stirring my big pot. There's all kind of treatment models in there. And I tend to like Gestalt and Virginia Satir. I like her. I love family therapy. And so that's probably why I like her. A lot of group models, and talk therapy is a form of group model. When you're in a group with people that say, me too, I've been through that, you tend to believe and understand that you're not an alien. Like this happened to other people too. And bad things happen to really good people. And you did nothing to bring this on and deserve this. And someone else, you notice that they didn't do anything wrong either. And so, okay, I'm actually okay and I'm going to be okay. So group therapy is wonderful. I have led many groups in the past and they're very effective. And so I recommend a group. Don't shy away from that. So individual or group therapy is wonderful. Theater and movement. What, Dr. Toy? I know. The research, I'm telling you, it's coming, it's going. It's building with drama. So theater and movement. So interplay, I tend to really love interplay because you're moving. It works well with kids, but it works great with adults. So interplay is different than theater, but I put it in there. So dancing, movement, interplay. Interplay is movement, getting your body moving. Why is that good? Because you answered it. You were paying attention because trauma gets trapped in your body. And when you are moving, okay, I'm not necessarily a dancer, I'm a singer. And so movement is very helpful. Singing and making tones and making your body feel those different tones. Music therapy is very effective and wonderful. And so if you love music and singing or playing. Music therapy can absolutely help you through trauma. But theater, I have been to different plays. There are play companies that specialize in trauma theater. And folks that have been traumatized or survivors, I tend to call them survivors, not victims, but folks that have gone through traumatic injury and come out on the other side, take on characters in theater and play it out. And they are really getting a lot through playing it out. And there are different theater companies in Pittsburgh, but all around the United States that do trauma plays and really those that are receiving it. One, it helps them to understand what someone has gone through when they're a survivor of trauma. But also, I've been in the audience where it helped those in the audience to say, that was me. I went through that. And I understand now, that that the way I reacted was normal. And I have hope now because this person in the play went through this horrible situation, but they were able to be healed and come out on the other end. So I've been a part of that. I've interviewed different drama companies that do, trauma theater. And so it heals the people that go through it. Nay Stubbs is a director and playwright, and I love the work that she does. And so I am giving a shout out to her as well. Just continue to do what you do. Okay. Okay. So there are controversial methods that I don't personally endorse, but I think it's just because I don't have enough research, haven't studied it as much. And so electrode, I actually had electrodes put on my scalp before and shown different videos and saw what, I was interested in and what I wasn't. And so now electrode teaches your brain to relax by saying that you are hyper aroused from this situation, from this, when we talk about this or when we show you this clip, this video clip. And this is how you can self-soothe and giving you methods. So I haven't read too much into it. Like I said, I was a guinea pig for something and it did read what I was interested in. It was very interesting. But that is actually evidence. And there's more research and evidence building for that. And psychedelics like LSD and EMDA, they have research behind it, but I don't sign off on it. Probably because I just would be very uncomfortable about a psychedelic taking control of my body. So I don't know enough about it to recommend it. So it is not on the list. I am mentioning it because I know that there are a lot of practitioners talking about it and there are people doing it. Also Reiki, I had a Reiki specialist on the show and you can watch that podcast and she talked about using that to help heal trauma. And so that's something, I don't know if it has a whole lot of research behind it, but anecdotal research, a lot of people are saying that it is effective and it works. So that is how a lot of different ways, as you can see, resolving the trauma. I also tend to talk towards people of color because a lot of times we have to diversify our methods in healing and go back to our root. And so drumming tends to be a very effective way to resolving trauma and getting those traumatic hormones, getting that trauma out. And so I have had circles, drumming circles. My daughter is a really good drummer. And so she, participates in drumming circles, but allowing, different ways of communicating with those that you have lost and different ways of, folks, there's a lot of people believe in ancestors giving us strength, especially through drumming. And so drumming is a very effective and creative way to release some of those stress hormones that are caused by trauma. So that is my list, y'all. That's my Dr. Toy 2 cents on all of it. Thank you again for writing in. I keep saying writing as if you picked up a pen and paper. You sent your emails. to Toya J at pitt.edu, and you shared your questions on this Ask a Therapist segment. And I am so grateful that you continue to listen and that I would handle your questions with care. These are my opinions. That's my disclaimer. These are my opinions from my experience. So it's my professional opinion. But you continue to seek healing through therapists that are trauma trained and have that foundation and that know exactly what you're going through. They study it, they have the training, they know it. So go ahead and seek a therapist. Reach out, get past that fear if you're still on the fence. If you're already in therapy with a trauma expert, a trauma therapist, good for you. Continue on. If you haven't made that step, just pick up the phone, just get in front of a computer, fill out that form. You can begin your healing journey at any time of your life. It is never too late. You are not a lost cause, and your healing can begin today. How about that? Okay, wonderful. It's wonderful to be with you today. Thank you so much for tuning in to Healing Overflow with Dr. Toy. Every other week, a new podcast comes out. So keep on listening, keep on sharing, because as you heal, your healing overflows onto everyone else. So keep on healing, keep on healing, y'all. I love y'all. Take care. Bye. See you next time.